I've worked in digital for my entire career. I started in 1999 actually as a developer, and then I eventually became a graphic designer, web designer. And then from there I became a user experience designer, which is kind of architecting the overall structure and interaction for an online experience. And that was where most of my career was until about 2 years ago. I started noticing that I was getting projects where a brand would come to me and say, can you guys, can you architect a microsite? And I'd say, well, sure, I can, but are you sure that's the best strategy for you? Because I don't think people are going to come to this microsite. I don't think people are going to sign up. I don't think it's going to work. So I kind of, using that as kind of my drive, I kind of moved into strategy. And what I do as a digital strategist is try to kind of identify where brands should be playing in the online space, whether it is, maybe it's just a Twitter page, maybe it's a whole experience, maybe it's a combination thereof. It really varies. So now I'm director of digital strategy at Publicis, which is interesting because it's a traditional organization, a lot of TV, a lot of print, and digital is really new to them. And so my role is to kind of sit with their creative brand teams and try to bring a digital perspective into the beginning of every project. And that's really important because even for projects that don't have a digital component, the world is becoming digital now, and consumers expect things digitally. So I think it's important to always think digitally, and that's kind of my point of view. So I think we live in this world where all communications, including those that you might usually think of as traditional, have digital influence or digital components. So when we work in advertising, I think our approach has to be different than traditional media. And this is because digital is fundamentally different from traditional media. And I'll talk about some ways I think it's different. The first real difference is that digital is highly fragmented. It's fragmented both from a device standpoint and from a software and services standpoint. And what's really challenging about this is that change is extremely fast-paced. And I love this infographic. It kind of shows where we've gotten our news over time, but what's interesting is that the scale is not even. So like you see the first 100 years versus the next 100 years versus just 20 years. We're changing channels really, really quickly. That's something really huge to consider. The biggest change, though, I think, with digital compared to traditional media is that communication is bi-directional. We don't live in a world where a small group of people holds all the power to broadcast anymore. We live in a world where everybody has the opportunity to be a publisher in their own right. So what this means for us is that people are talking, sharing, aggregating information. They're creating, remixing, and watching information. And they're doing all of that for, with, and against brands. So if you want to work in advertising, you really do have to understand digital. And I think this is more and more true every day. Does that mean you need to, program a website? Not necessarily, but you need to understand how digital is affecting the way people consume media, the way people interact with media, and advertising and how brands can tap into that as a whole.